Right. Let's take a breather.
You said his name right when that shot kicked in. Yeah. What's up? This is Matt Barnes coming to you from Raleigh, North Carolina. And today I'm sitting here with
Siyara Dobbs. I am a licensed clinical social worker, fancy way to say therapist. And while I'm open to working with all people, my targeted population is women of color.
Yep. And I'm Jazmyne Childs. I'm a political organizer, and I work organizing dollars and people, and love being in the community.
Really excited to kind of get your guys' perspective of just what's kind of going on right now. And there's a lot going on. What issues do you guys want to see prioritized by your state and federal government?
So as a parent, I think education is important. I just recently learned that there's no federal regulations on education. So each state determines what the curriculum consists of. And that is just wild because they can decide what history is important, what lessons are important, what literature we're reading. There's also new laws about gender and what age to speak on, and then telling their parents. And a lot of children don't have a lot of protection at home. So school is their safe haven. And so if this is the place where you're compromising their ability to just be, then where are they safe? Where are they seen? So I would like things to be for education to be a focus. It's ridiculous.
Yeah. Oh, absolutely.
Yeah, I mean, we touched on Mark Robinson, and I was reading something about he wants to take history and science
completely out.
I mean, how do you feel as two proud, strong African American women that they don't want to teach the history of our culture, the side effects, the lasting effects and generations to come of what our ancestors had gone through?
I think like the way that hits me is, I feel so like I am a political organizer. Like I love politics and I love I love community and bringing community together. But and I think about my upbringing. I'm from Charlotte, North Carolina. I went through a program called the IB program in a particular area of town, Black area of town, all Black kids learning all these amazing things. Like it was truly an experience that was fantastical. I feel like people write about these things, and don't get to live it. And so I feel very grateful for that. But much of who I am as a person is because I had amazing Black teachers teaching me Black history, doing all the things. And to hear that from the mouth of a Black man makes me I can just imagine, and I've had to deal with this, but I've had to look myself in the mirror and say, am I wrong for being the person that I am? And doing the things that I do and caring about the things that I care about to the point where we don't want to create more people like that. Is this a fallacy? And obviously I quickly get over that, but I can only imagine other young people who are just around and hearing the confusion of, if I feel that way as a grown woman and the confusion of hearing your daughter, oh, they don't want me to learn about myself in the history books.
Lack of representation.
Lack of representation. What's wrong with me? What's wrong with my people? What's wrong with my past?
Yeah.
Obviously, a lot of attention is always on the presidential. What side you on? Speak to the importance on the local and state level on how people can get involved and people who want to get involved. How do you guys? What do you guys recommend for people like that?
So, I think a couple things. Well, I think that there are a lot of mechanisms in North Carolina that are moving a lot of people who are doing a really amazing work that I could lift up, that I think people could plug into specifically in North Carolina, and understanding that I don't think that most people walk around with the understanding that, local government is what hits your life every day.
And that's where you really get immediate turnaround.
Yeah,
and
exactly.
that's what I say, because I feel like we are never meant to have a voice, space in this. You know what I
Yes.
mean? So to
Yes.
jump and try to dive into the whole thing is a lot. But if you can do the local level, the potholes, the school issues, the stuff in your community, that's where you see your vote
Exactly.
turned
And
around,
we're
and that
talking.
might light the light to, okay, now I want to learn a little bit more about, let's up our.
Man, oh man, I have an amazing story about Cabarrus County, and there is a representative there, young lady who really wasn't thinking about becoming engaged like politically, but people really rallied around her, like the community rallied around her, and ended up voting her into the House. Like she ended up getting voted into the House of Representatives. This isn't a woman who came from a background of politics or policy or having known any. She was just someone who was genuinely a citizen who was genuinely interested in just changing things in her community. And now she's sitting in our legislature, and she's a rep. And I think like things like that are what is possible when people become engaged, right? Like she was just a mom every day living her life. And like, I want to see better for my children. And now she's a legislature actually making decisions like that. And it was completely possible. This was out of a county. It's outside of Charlotte. It's called Cabarrus County. And it was organizations that like I work with, like Down Home and North Carolina, A. Philip Randolph, that helped her get to that position. And we are talking about just everyday people caring about a cause, wanting to lift people up and putting someone in place to make permanent decisions about lives and change them. And so I think that's just what's possible when when folks actually decide they want to step into organizing. Also, like I have gone and with the help of Dina Hayes Green, who you interviewed yesterday. Yeah, so we have worked together to build an organization called Black Pearl Society for Black women. So when we're talking about things like abortion, it's so important to fall into or be able to not just be energized and have an opinion about politics, but how can I make my opinion work? Well, joining organizations like that, I can help make my opinion work for me. I can help support organizations. We've also been, and Siyara's actually been to like one of the events for the Black Donor Network. How can we make Black dollars also then work and put those Black dollars back into organizations and people who are on the ground every day, helping get people to the polls, helping to get people like our representative out of Cabarrus County elected? How can we create a system in North Carolina that works for us? And there's a place for everyone in this movement. Everyone has a role.
I was thinking, I think people, they overlook the just presence. Like you don't have to know the things to be in the proper places, like how your presence is enough, representation is enough. Put yourself in those spaces so you can learn more about what's happening, so you can begin to advocate, so you can see the passion, but just be present. I think a lot of people limit themselves due to like lack of knowledge, but just be there. Be in the room and you'll leave with something. So just being present, I think, is very, very valuable.
I think obviously now the word minority is used to keep people of color, so to speak, in their place, but we're actually the majority.
We are.
What do you think keeps people of color from taking that next step and getting to the polls?
Well, if you, I can take this one. Well, I think like we don't win when we're not honest. Like, let's be honest. Like people of color in this country have faced incredible barriers. And just like you see Mark Robinson out here saying, we don't want to learn about history and like these things are wrong, to make white people feel guilty is wrong, I think is the same thing that this country has told us. And Black and brown folks have heard those things. And so it's a survival mechanism, I think. Like, I think it's a matter of survival. And I don't, and I try to shy away from blaming folks for not getting to the polls, because I'm not going to act like people told me about politics at a young age, or told me about what it meant to be politically engaged. That wasn't happening for me. Like I had to learn those things on my own. And also that information has been kept from our people. It has. And so I think what it means to be engaged is a taking back of this country we have built. People of color have built this. White people are standing on our shoulders right the fuck now. And we have got to take that back. They keep that information from us for a reason. And I think that, like, again, like on the local level, when we were talking about local politics and local organizing, that is the strategy to taking those things back that were taken from us.
Obviously, it's no mystery that the death rate for African American women delivering children or attempting to deliver children is a lot higher than any other race. What are your guys' thoughts around the no exemption? Me particular, I mean, I have a fiance who's in the mid 40s. I won't give her age because she might see this and be mad at me, but high risk nevertheless. And we hear a ton of horror stories about, women wanting to have children, but not making it. When you hear that there's no exemption for anything, or just the death rate of African American women giving labor being disproportionate to other races, what are your guys' thoughts on that?
So as a mother and someone who has obviously experienced pregnancy, being able to advocate for yourself and have the proper resources is very, very, very important, especially making sure that you're being monitored. And for some, you can run the risk of having let's just say ectopic pregnancy, which is when your egg isn't connected to your uterus, whatever. But you would have to carry that and be in pain and run the risk of losing your life, carrying a life that may not be sustainable. And so to have someone make that decision for you and put yourself at risk, it's just unfair because they don't have to live with that. They don't have the pain, they don't have the trauma, they don't have the negative experience. And so they're just an outsider, a bystander, so to speak. And so who are you to tell me what I can do and what's safe?
Right.
As someone who does not have kids, honestly, this really scares me. I think about could I even bring a child into the world? Because, in Siyara, even with the risk that you gave, it's an eye opener for me. And what it brought up is what about the post effects? People end up being diabetic after pregnancy because of certain things. People end up losing their lives, and it is couched into this larger conversation of Black maternal health. That I think, and we say, so, we talk a lot about abortion, but also the state of Black maternal health. When do Black women actually get the chance to be healthy?
Yeah.
We can't do it in pregnancy. We can't do it, anywhere else with our healthcare system. When do we actually get an opportunity to survive? And so I think it's scary as hell.
It's a lack of protection. Who sees you, who hears you, who values you.
And that's always been the cry of Black women, is just understanding who's there for us.
So speaking of, with you having a young one on the way and being a leader and a protector, what are your thoughts?
Nervous.
Yeah.
Nervous. I mean, again, my fiance is in her mid 40s, and although she's an expert at this, this will be our seventh child. It's just the risk factor continues to grow up. I mean, she's a high risk pregnancy. She had to spend 2 weeks in the hospital because she caught a small flu because she's older. Yeah. You know what I mean? So just the reality of obviously wanting and expecting another healthy baby boy in a month, but also the realism of, okay, my fiance is older. You know what I mean? And they have to have all these people on standby now, because preparing for the worst case, obviously praying for the best. So it is something that's nerve-wracking, and as a father and as a protector, it's a very scary time right now, in a time that's supposed to be so joyful and happy and exciting. So it's definitely something nervous, something I'm very nervous about, and we pray about often, and again, hoping for the best, but again, for women that don't even have the choice is what kind of worries me. And again, something I'll continue to reiterate is that the loudest voices and the voices that are ringing the most bells are coming from men that have no idea what it's like to even be a part of this.
Obviously, I think this is egregious. And, in state, we have a candidate, Mark Robinson, who...
Hold on.
Right. Let's take a break.
You said his name right when that shot kicked in.
His negative spirit is amongst us. But we have a candidate in state, Mark Robinson, who has said directly that if he is governor, there will be no abortions, no exceptions. No exceptions. And also, he is a larger part. We've had a vice president who has said, or excuse me, a vice presidential nominee who has said the same thing, J.D. Vance. So we are really staring death in its face, like when we are talking about these things. Like, we're talking about the loss of independence for women. We're talking about the loss of bodily autonomy for women. And these men are telling us, like, I don't know what some women are expecting who are voting on the conservative end of this, who I know get impacted by these issues the same way I do. I don't know if they think things will be different. I know that it's been said that there'll be exceptions for rape, or there'll be exceptions for incest. Those things are lies. Like, no, there will not be. Even if then, like, you have to report these things to the police, and then you're relying on a system to tell you whether or not, if your instance is valid.
Right. Do you get the check mark?
Exactly. You get the check mark to do it. Like, this means loss of a freedom that women have had for over 60 years. Are we really going to let that happen? Are we really going to let that be our story in North Carolina? Are we going to let that be our story nationally? And if it's up to me, and I think that's why I work hard every day, and Siyara, you in your capacity work very hard every day, to make that not the reality. Yeah.
So I'm a therapist by trade. And so when I think about the no exception and think about rape and incest and just any kind of sexual assault, I think about the trauma that's attached to that and how it's going to impact the mom and the child and like generations to come, because you weren't like wanted. This didn't come from love. Family wasn't fostered. You were made to do this. And that just impacts people on several levels that like officials can't account for because it's not their direct experience.
Absolutely.
And it's just so much deeper than yes, you can or no, you can't when it's lives involved.
Well, I just think too, I mean, obviously when you think rape, incest, you think of the actual physical act, but then you're touching from a therapist standpoint, the psychological and mental trauma that is not just going to sit here for that particular incident, but for the rest of your life, you're thinking about that situation. And for men to say like, hey, sorry, maybe not even saying sorry, it happened to you, but deal with it.
Yeah, you don't have a choice.
And these are things you don't get over. You have to like live through them, and then you're constantly reminded in your day to day when you see this being
that you're supposed to love and cherish, and I know that'll happen, but at the same time, it came, it
was forced.
The perfect word. It was forced.
It was forced. Yeah.
So.
And Matt, like, I want to know, like, from like with your experience, like how, like, what would you think your life would be like if you didn't have the option to ever like have had an abortion?
Well, I would have been a dad at 17.
Wow.
I'm 44 now, so I would have been a dad at 17, going to UCLA and then playing a 15-year NBA career. And although I was, a part of the act that made that child, I wasn't necessarily ready for the responsibility that came with that. And I think, having two sons that are 15 years old now, and we have a very open conversation, luckily. And, they came to me last summer like, Dad, we think we're ready for condoms. And I was like, oh shit. But also I felt relieved because they felt like they can come to me because they knew they couldn't go to their mom with that. You know what I mean? So they came to me and we had that conversation, and I was very willing to, hey, this is what you do. This is how you use it. I'm not ready to be a grandfather yet. Because again, at the time, we can put ourselves back in our teenage selves and thinking we know everything. And I'm doing adult acts, even though I'm not an adult, but there's real repercussions, and I wouldn't say consequence because a child is not a consequence, but there's real, issues that arise from that. So, for me personally, at 17 to be a dad, I don't know what I would have done, because it could have possibly derailed my focus in college. It could have derailed my opportunity to play basketball. So it was just a lot of different things. And again, for men to say, you can't, to me, it's just, this is the one situation where, I mean, there's others, but this is the one that really comes to the forefront where we kind of need to take a back seat and listen to what you guys think, because again, it is your guys' bodies, and it is the decision that is going to stick with you for the rest of your lives. Well, ladies, I appreciate your guys' time today. Thank you very much. Continue the great work you guys are doing in your community. This is P68 Softening the Ground Conversation. We hope you guys picked up something and will apply it. Make sure you guys get out there to those polls. We'll see you guys next time.